Welcome to Students Talk Back, a new video segment at northeastvalleynews.org. This is your chance to voice your opinion on current events. Watch for our reporters around campus or email us at nevalleynews.org@gmail.com. I'm Ole Olafson here with northeastvalleynews.org, and I am speaking to
Aaron Taliaferro, an academic and career advisor.
All right, who works here at Scottsdale Community College. The U.S. government has imposed sanctions and allegedly engaged in secret talks to ouster dictator/President Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. Do you feel like it's appropriate for the U.S. to attempt to influence another country's political system?
No, especially when we don't have our own in order.
Should First Amendment rights be extended to protesters whose comments may incite violence, much like we saw with the incident at the Lincoln Monument, where several different groups of protesters kind of clashed? Those kind of things are happening more and more often with the number of protests that we have going on in our society. Do you think that sort of racist language or language that might incite violence should be protected by First Amendment rights?
I do think that the basic fundamental of the amendment says that, freedom of speech, but I feel like people would be violent regardless of things were said or not. So people who are going to be violent, words shouldn't really aren't the sole influencer of that. I think it's that person's mindset and their actions. So, no, I don't think we should restrict those people's right to speak out.
Some areas in the Midwest, especially Minnesota, are experiencing extreme cold temperatures in the minus 50 degree area. Does this major cold snap in the Midwest affect your opinion about climate change or global warming, whatever you want to call it?
No, I think there's a perfectly reasonable explanation, and that meteorologists and weather people who are well versed in weather and climate, they know the explanation. I'm personally from Wisconsin, so this is something that does personally affect my family members and things of that nature in regards to obviously there's people dying and pipes freezing and all that stuff, but I do still believe that global warming is really a thing. It's not some hoax or something that people created for whatever. There's a scientific explanation for it. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm here talking with
Valerie Blake.
Great, Valerie. The U.S. government has imposed sanctions and allegedly engaged in secret talks to ouster President/dictator Maduro from Venezuela. Are you familiar with this situation?
I am not actually familiar with this situation.
All right, well, we're messing with Venezuela.
All right.
So the question is, do you think it's appropriate for the U.S. to interfere in another country's political system?
I don't actually. I think that you should kind of be independent of other countries' affairs. I don't know.
Me too. Me too. That's a great answer. Recently, there's been a lot of protests in the last few months revolving around politics and different things. Most recently, there was a protest near the Lincoln Monument in Washington, D.C., where several groups of protesters kind of got involved with each other. There's a video, and there's been a lot of talk about it. So our question is, should First Amendment rights be extended to protesters whose comments might incite violent acts, or should we be cracking down on that sort of activity?
I hadn't thought about that. I guess there's a level of civility that should be enforced, but you can't stop people from doing and saying things, I guess. I don't know.
It's been very, very cold in the Midwest. I don't know if you have any relatives back there or if you're from there, but it's been extremely cold, 50 below, temperatures like that in Minnesota and different places. Does that extreme cold snap that we're experiencing now, does that change your opinion on the global climate change situation or global warming, whatever we want to call it now?
I honestly don't think it has a whole lot of meaning on anything that large scale. I think there are periods in history where places are colder and warmer, and I don't feel like one period of cold is going to be like, oh, it's not this or it's not that. I'm not sure.
Tyler Buckland reporting for NortheastValleyNews.org. I'm here with
Ian.
Ian, so the U.S. has recently, there's been reports about the U.S. being involved with perhaps overthrowing the Venezuela current president. Do you think that's something that the U.S. should be involved with? Getting involved in other countries' affairs? What are your thoughts?
I'd say depending on the state that the country is in itself, that it might be a good idea to get involved kind of on the side as maybe a diplomatic force, because if there's maybe civil unrest, some sort of balance in order to let people see that there's not something to be too afraid of.
There's recently been some crazy weather going on in the Midwest. Some people have been dying from it. Do you think that has anything to do with climate change? Do you think that's had any effect on the type of weather we're seeing in the Midwest right now? And if so, do you think that's something that we should be working to stop?
I'd say, of course, because it's going to happen anyway due to pollution, kind of the machines we have going, all that. It will cause climate change, but I wouldn't say it's causing too much of an issue itself. Maybe a little bit of regulation for either overworking or too much pollution itself that might be good, but nothing too extreme. Otherwise, it's going to cause a halt.
With the First Amendment rights, do you think people should be limited on what type of inflammatory remarks that they can say in public? Recently we had at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., there was, I guess, a few groups that broke out and there was some fights that went on. Do you think there should be more guidelines and boundaries for what people can say out in public and rallies?
I feel not at all. People should be be allowed to say whatever they want as long as it isn't so violent it causes a group of people to come at others. Like, let's say a rally to go beat up a person. That's not a good use of freedom of speech because that can be prosecuted. But let's say you call someone some random racial slur. That should be allowed, but you shouldn't enact with violence. Because if that happens, then that's something else entirely.
So why is that, do you think, that people should be allowed to say stuff like that? Do you think it'd be infringing on people's rights if you did limit that?
Yes. So it would lead to people having to watch everything that they say, whether they offend a person, whether they say something that can be construed different ways, because opinions are opinions. They can't hurt anyone unless you enact on them.
I'm here with
Mia.
Mia. Are you a student here at Scottsdale Community College?
I am.
Our U.S. government has imposed sanctions and allegedly participated in secret meetings to try to ouster the dictator / President Maduro, who's in power right now. Do you think it's appropriate for the U.S. to try to manipulate other countries' political systems?
No, I don't. I feel like since World War II, the U.S. has been sort of established as a world policeman. And while that might work and be conducive to an ongoing effort towards world peace in some cases, I think when it comes to interfering directly in other countries' politics, unless it's a developing country, I don't think we should get involved. I think being a diplomatic voice or offering guidance, if asked for it, I think that's appropriate. But other than that, I think we should keep to ourselves.
There's been a lot of protests in the last few months. A lot of them have been centered around our new president. There's just a variety of things that have come to the forefront as far as topics for protesters. Recently, there was an incident near the Lincoln Monument where several groups of protesters got involved with each other. One was a Native American gentleman, one was some high school kids. There was some racial slurs apparently that were yelled out by one group towards the other, and that potentially could have started a violent situation. Do you think that First Amendment rights should be extended to protesters whose comments may incite violent actions?
I think the root of the problem comes from just cultural insensitivity. I don't think the right to freedom of speech has already been established. I think getting rid of it won't do anyone any good. I think we need to just have a better social norm, that people should just be educated on cultures and what is offensive and what isn't, and how they exercise their freedom of speech is their choice, and they should be fully aware that other people will respond negatively to some things they choose, and there are consequences for things that are said in certain situations.
There's been a widespread cold snap in the Midwest, where temperatures have been plummeting to sometimes around 50 below zero. Does this recent cold snap in the Midwest and all these extreme cold temperatures, does that change your perception of climate change or global warming, whatever we want to call it now? Or
No, global warming is real. There is multiple studies and a plethora of scientific evidence to support this. My stance on whether or not I believe in global warming can't be shaken by anything. The reason why we've had multiple polar vortexes over the last couple of years is because of climate change. There's a huge misconception of the idea of global warming that the entire world all at once will become very hot and there will be no cold weather. That's not how weather works. I'm not an expert on the issue, but I can understand that the issues of global warming can affect weather on a global scale at different times and in different ways. And on an overall scale, global temperature is rising. So that's been documented.
okay, so no change in your opinion.
No change in my opinion.
All right.